My son and his wife don't contribute any money to the living expenses, and they use up all the money they have for something else. They have no savings, and when they asked for my credit card and paycheck, I told them that I couldn't give them. What? Why not? I'm your eldest son, and you are supposed to listen to me. What? Well, Grandma said so. So, you have to listen to my wife as well. Why can't you understand? My son is just following what my mother-in-law taught him. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, I left the house in the darkness. I have a job. When I started working, there was a deep-seated resentment towards women working, and the common belief was that women should stay at home and have children. My mother-in-law, like many others, constantly said such things. My husband and I had an arranged marriage, and our parents were close, but I believe my husband and I also got along well. Because my husband was the eldest son, it was already decided that we would live with his parents from the beginning of our marriage. As I started living with them, my mother-in-law began making snide remarks. She didn't like that I was working, and her favorite phrase was, "We are financially stable, so hurry up and have children." Certainly, my in-laws had a fairly large house, and it seems that they used to have a say in the matter in the neighborhood, but now their connections with the neighbors have weakened, and they only exchange greetings. No one regards what my in-laws say as absolute. However, my mother-in-law, trapped in an old mindset, was overjoyed when my son was born. "He is the heir to our family," she said. Immediately after I gave birth to my son, he was taken by my mother-in-law. I protested to my husband, but he only said, "It can't be helped." My husband was raised as the eldest son himself, so even if he saw something wrong with his mother's actions, he would only say, "Bear with it." What my mother says is absolute. I had no one to turn to. So, I did my best to prevent my son from being taken by my mother-in-law. But humans naturally gravitate towards those who spoil them, especially when they are young. Whenever I disciplined him, he would quickly run to his grandmother. "Oh my, your mother is scary," she would say, laughing at me. I then gave birth to a daughter. But my mother-in-law didn't pay her any attention at all. Even when my son became a high school student, my mother-in-law didn't let him get a part-time job, and she continued to give him allowances. She never says anything nice to my daughter. I gave a lot of love to my daughter, so she wouldn't be hurt. I showered my son with affection as well, but all that came back was insults. "I only need Grandma. I don't need you." When he said that, my heart broke. My daughter, seeing this, held me tight and said, "Mom, I'm here for you." I remember that moment. My husband didn't help, and my son became attached to my mother-in-law, refusing to listen to me. The only one I could trust was my daughter. Gradually, my son began to belittle not only me, but also my daughter. Although my son went to a private university that wasn't particularly prestigious, my mother-in-law criticized my daughter's decision to go to university. "Women don't need education. Just get a job." I couldn't let that happen to my daughter, so I used my savings, and my daughter worked hard, and she successfully got into a public university. This further intensified my son's hostility toward my daughter. He couldn't bear the fact that his younger sister had entered a better university than him. However, in the midst of all this, my mother-in-law fell ill and passed away quite suddenly. It was truly unexpected. Even if I was asked to take care of my mother-in-law, I would have had no intention of doing it, but my husband was deeply saddened by the loss of his beloved mother. However, after a while, he fully recovered. Eventually, my son and daughter found jobs and moved out. My son got a job through my husband's connections, while my daughter joined a major advertising agency. "You're so full of yourself. There's no point in a woman working," my son repeated the words my mother-in-law used to say. However, my daughter is already an adult. She didn't pay any attention to him and simply said, "Thank you, Mom," and left the house. Then it was just my husband and me in the house. I had wondered if our relationship would improve. Once it was just the two of us, but my husband also passed away soon after, due to an accident caused by his own carelessness. It was a case of drunk driving. Initially, when I heard it from the police, I was in shock, but somewhere along the way, I felt a sense of relief. My daughter, who has just started working, rushed over and helped me with the funeral preparations. As for my son, he was just sitting there looking tired. When my mother-in-law passed away, my son had a similar attitude. He thinks that people around him who don't matter to him should take care of things. "You're the eldest son, so everyone else will handle it." My mother-in-law used to say something like that, I think. After the funeral, he quickly left, and finally, my daughter and I were able to have a quiet meal together. "You are going to be alone in such a big house. Are you going to be okay with it?" "I'll be fine. If push comes to shove, I'll sell it." I was left with this large house. Although I had said that to my daughter, I am over 60 now. Moving would be quite a hassle. So, I tried to keep my belongings to a minimum, and aimed for a modest life. I sorted through my mother-in-law's and my husband's belongings, and the upstairs of this 2-story house became almost empty, and I lived using only the main floor. I was planning to retire soon, and as I began to think about what to do in this spacious house, my son suddenly returned. With his wife and child. "Sorry, Mom, but could we live here, too? It's spacious, so it's okay, right?" "Excuse me. Wait a minute, before that, did you get married?" "Oh, I had told Dad. It was a long time ago." They entered the house without permission, causing a commotion. I was in shock. My son hadn't even told me that he got married. Moreover, he said that he had received thousands of dollars as a gift from my husband. With my husband gone, my son had been thinking about moving in with me when things settled down. Completely disregarding my feelings, he said, "Mom, you must be happy too. My wife is moving in, as well as your grandchild. Oh, I'll leave the housework to you." We hadn't even exchanged greetings yet, but my daughter-in-law pushed the responsibility of the housework onto me as a matter of course. From that very day, my hell had begun again. My daughter-in-law is a stay-at-home mom, but doesn't do any housework nor take care of her child. A grandchild who hasn't been disciplined immediately flops on the sofa and plays games when he comes home. I was busy with daily chores for 4 people. In addition, I ended up doing everything such as my grandchild's discipline and nursery school drop-offs and pickups. I had thought that I could finally live freely, as my mother-in-law and husband were gone. It turns out that it was my daughter-in-law who suggested that they live with me. She didn't want to do any housework or take care of her child by herself, so she brought up this idea to my son. Since to my son, this was just the matter of going back to his parents' house, he had no problem with it, and they seemed to think that it is only natural for me to do everything. "Hey, Danny. Why haven't you taken the clothes to the dry cleaning? And dinner is late," she would say. "Come on, Grandma. Do it properly," my grandchild adds. My daughter-in-law insults me every day, and my grandchild joins in, laughing. My son pretends not to notice. Even when I cook, they find fault with it, demand that I redo the cleaning, and yet they don't contribute a penny to the living expenses. My son and his wife don't contribute any money to the living expenses, and they use up all the money they have for something else. They have no savings, and when they asked for my credit card and paycheck, I told them that I couldn't give them. "What? Why not? I'm your eldest son, and you are supposed to listen to me." "What?" "Well, Grandma said so. So, you have to listen to my wife as well. Why can't you understand?" My son is just following what my mother-in-law taught him. He believes he can treat his mother however he wants, because he's the eldest son. His actions tell all. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, I fled the house in the darkness. I clutched a bag containing only my wallet and phone, and made my way to a nearby park. With trembling hands, I called my daughter. Although it was middle of the night, she listened to my entire story. I confessed that I was being treated like a housemaid, that they wanted to take my salary and savings, and that I wanted to leave this house, all while crying. As soon as she heard everything, I could sense the anger in my daughter's voice. "What? I can't believe it. Mom, where are you right now?" "I'll come pick you up," she said. My daughter acted swiftly, and was at the park to pick me up in less than 30 minutes. "Mom," as soon as she found me sitting beside the slide, she hugged me. "I'm sorry that I didn't notice." I didn't want to burden my daughter with worry, so I kept quiet. But in the end, I had to rely on her, and I felt guilty. "I've already told my husband everything, so come to my house," she said. "But, Mom, you've always been there for me. It's my turn to help you." My daughter, who became reliable, took me by the hand and drove me to the condo where she and her husband lived. Upon arrival, my son-in-law greeted me. "You must have been cold. Please come in quickly." When my daughter got married, she didn't want to spend money, so she didn't have a wedding ceremony nor go on a honeymoon. I had only met him once before they got married, but he still had a kind and gentle look. "Starting today, you live here. You don't need to go back to that place anymore," she said. "I wonder if your brother will agree." I responded. "Leave it to me," she said with an adorable smile. Seeing that expression, I finally felt at ease. My son-in-law prepared a warm drink for me, and after drinking it, I took a long bath. They prepared a very comfortable bed for me, and for the first time in a long time, I was able to sleep undisturbed. It might have been the first time since I got married. The next day, as expected, my son called my daughter. "Hey, what's going on? Give Mom back. We need her for household chores. It's her job. Mom won't be going back there. It seems like you've treated her pretty badly." His sister, whom he had looked down upon, retorted. Upon hearing this, my son erupted in anger. "I'm living together for her, you know. She should be grateful. She can even spend time with her grandchild. But, Cooper, you haven't been contributing to the living expenses, right? How could you make Mom pay for you when she is ready to retire? It's a mother's duty to serve her son. If you have a problem with it, why don't you try living with her?" Upon hearing those words, my daughter smirked. "Sure, I will." "Are you sure? A woman like you is living totally depending on her husband, right? Even if you beg me to help you when Mom needs a caregiving, I will never help you. Cooper, the same goes for you. And no matter what happens, don't ever come asking for help from us. Of course. Don't ever contact me again." After my daughter finished what was hardly a sibling conversation, she took immediate action. She went with her husband to my house and took my belongings out of the house. Since I had kept my possessions to a minimum, it was just about 2 moving boxes. "What's in it for you if you take in an old woman like her? You've always been foolish." My son apparently kept saying these things to my daughter and her husband as they packed, but she simply ignored him and returned home. She had brought my bank book and other important documents as well. I unpacked my belongings and started a life with my daughter and her family. However, our homes were separate. My daughter and her husband rented the unit right next to theirs for me, ensuring that we have our own spaces. "Mom, you must be tired of living with someone else. Take it easy for a while. It's not right. Mom, it's okay to start using your time for yourself now." My daughter hugged me tightly, and tears welled up in my eyes. I've suffered from living with someone else. I mean living with my mother-in-law, and then with my son's family, so I have nothing but gratitude to my daughter for preparing a separate unit for me. Even though we now live in adjacent rooms, my daughter never relies on me. She handles everything, including housework, and even picking up her child from daycare, sometimes using babysitters or family support services. I couldn't just watch her doing it all. On days when she couldn't make it on time for pickup, or when there were sudden calls from the daycare, I told her that I could go instead. "No, that's not right. It would be just like before. It won't be every day. It's different with your brother's case and yours. I'm the one who wants to help, so please rely on me more." In the past, I had been ordered and moved around, but now I want to be of help to my daughter. Her husband always said, "Thank you," and gave me some thank you gifts whenever I picked up their child. Gradually, we started having meals together once a week, and when our schedules allowed, we went out as a family. On the day my granddaughter told me, "I'm happy to be with you, Grandma," I couldn't help but hug her with joy. Those were truly happy days. "Don't worry about caregiving. I'll take care of you until the end," she said clearly, but I didn't want to be a burden. I had even started looking for caregiving facilities myself, but my daughter was resolute. "Maybe it's strange to ask you to rely on us, but Mom, you can focus on yourself now." I still felt guilty, but as time passed, I started to think, maybe it's okay to lean on them a little. It was around that time that someone we had forgotten about came back into our lives. One Sunday, when we were having lunch together, the intercom rang. My daughter casually answered it, and a voice on the other end said, "It's me, long time no see." It was my son and his wife who appeared on the monitor, both with half-hearted smiles. "What do you want?" my daughter asked. "Wow, you guys are living in such a fancy condo. You're doing well," he commented. In fact, we were living in a popular condo in the area, all thanks to their success. After quitting the advertising company, my daughter started her own business and is now a company president, while her husband holds a high-ranking position in that company. I don't know how my son and his wife found out about it. No, it doesn't matter. What matters is why they had come. We had a brief conversation through the intercom, and it seemed that people started giving him cold shoulder at the company, where he joined through his late father's connections. He was never particularly skilled at work. He probably had been acting arrogantly, because his father was working there as well. But after my husband passed away, they may have stopped treating my son with extra consideration. My son expected everyone to cater to him. He couldn't understand how it had come to this. Yet, he came to ask my daughter and me, whom he had looked down on, for help. "I'll come down to talk," I said. "Wait, Mom, I'll go with you," my daughter said. My daughter left her child with her husband and joined me in the lobby. My son and his wife were already there, arguing with the concierge, who was trying to prevent them from entering without permission. "Stop it, you're embarrassing yourselves." When I scolded them as we approached, they ran toward us, smiling. "Mom, you must have missed us all this time. But it's okay now. I'll live with you again," my son declared. "You were probably bored, right? I'll let you take care of your grandchild again." How shameless could they be? I couldn't help it, and I slapped my son in the face. He fell back in surprise. "Oh yeah. You've never been hit by your grandmother or father, so this must be just for show, but I'll accept your apology, at least for now," I said. However, this was the first time my son had witnessed my cold demeanor. And he looked incredulous. "We want nothing to do with you anymore. Don't bother your sister and her husband either. You're both an embarrassment. Leave immediately," I declared. I couldn't display maternal warmth anymore. He had always been a spoiled child, who would run to my mother-in-law when he got scolded, and I had given up on him, so I'm somewhat responsible. Therefore, I said this, as my final act of love. "It's your fault that you've become an annoyance. Work diligently. Paula, why don't you get a part-time job or something? Try your best and put in some effort before relying on others." The lobby fell silent. My son stammered, "Why are you being so harsh?" and started crying. His wife, on the other hand, turned pale and began trembling. "If you stay here any longer, I'll call the police, so please leave now. And if you ever come back, I'll consult with a lawyer," my daughter warned them. With that, my son and his wife finally left. Afterward, my son and his wife borrowed money from the wife's parents and managed to start living in a small apartment. Perhaps her parents were strict, and when they found out about their situation, they said they would help only this time, and they became distant after that. My son got a new job a few times, but he seems to struggle wherever he goes. It's difficult for someone who used to look down on and mock others to be accepted. People turn away from him quickly, and he's starting to realize that he's the one who needs to change. However, I wonder if he can still change after all this time. Finally, it appeared that his wife had also started working, but it didn't last either. I heard that the shouting can be heard from their apartment almost every day. As for me, I finally found peace in my life. The other day, I even went to my granddaughter's school for the field day, and couldn't help but cheer loudly. "Mom, I'm so glad you're feeling better. Please stay by my side until the time she gets married. You're my precious mother." When she said these words with sincere eyes, I cried. Half of my life was filled with hardships, but now, it's overflowing with happiness. I intend to cherish my daughter, her husband, and my grandchild as we move forward.